All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of GoGoLearn. Today, I'm very excited to bring you Denis Oakley. He's going to talk to us. He's going to give us a simple strategy template to guide our business decisions, which who doesn't want that crystal ball? So Denis likes exploring. He helps startups explore how disruptive ideas can transform industries and make the world a better place. He uses strategy as a tool to help leaders connect the dots in quite different ways. So when he's not at his desk, he's usually found running through jungles and across mountains. So Denis, I'm going to hand it over to you. Take it away.
Thanks, Heather. Let me just share my screen and get the presentation up. And let me go. So is this sharing properly?
It is. You're set.
Awesome. So thanks, Heather. Today, I thought I'd talk a little bit about strategy and really simplify it down as much as possible. I've been working in startups, helping entrepreneurs, being one myself for, I guess, the last 20 years. And a lot of the time, as entrepreneurs, we make lots and lots of mistakes. While back, and I was one of them, we made stuff that nobody wanted. And a bit like Kevin Costner in The Field of Dreams, we said we'll build stuff and hope that people would come. Over the last 10 years, people have sort of said, okay, let's go out, figure out what the problems people have got, and then we'll build something to solve those problems. And that works better. But in my work for venture capitalists and private equity firms, 70–80% of the companies that we invest in still fail. Yeah, so obviously understanding the problem, understanding the customer and creating a great product isn't enough. And so part of the answer to this, after lots of soul searching, a huge amount of reading and a lot of, I think something like over 1,000 mentoring engagements now, is looking at the strategy, focusing on the strategy to cut through an awful lot of the stuff that startups just don't think about, don't look at, don't care about, and end up sort of crashing and burning. And as much as anything, this applies to freelancers, it applies to bootstrappers, it applies to solopreneurs, small businesses. Everything that I say here applies to all of those. And it's also going to apply to larger businesses as well. And the pictures, as Heather said, I like getting outside. I find a lot of business presentations fairly boring. So we'll try and keep you entertained with some pretty slides. So the first thing that you need to do in the framework is to set yourself a goal. And a goal's got to be significant. It's got to be something that is worthwhile doing, because if it's not worthwhile doing, then it's not really going to matter at all. And what I mean by significant, if you think about Michael Gerber in the E-Myth Revisited, and he had this wonderful way of putting things. He said, think about your business when it's finished in 5 years or 10 years time. What is it going to look like when your project is completed? And that really is got to be your goal. So it's not financial. It's not, I want to make 100,000 a year, or I want to sort of be earning a dividend of X. Any of those things, it's got to be somewhat tangible, somewhat meaningful. And the goal has got to be far enough in the distance. So it's not something that you can just kick the ball into the net. No, you've got to head out there, you've got to go further, and you've got to challenge yourself. And the more distinct and clear that goal is right up front, the easier it is to achieve. I literally worked with thousands of startups, and probably less than 10% have actually got a clear goal of what they want to achieve. The ones that do have a clear goal are the ones who are able to go out and achieve it. So the next step is very much think about the change that you want to make. This, taking it from Seth Godin's work, thinking about the change that you want to create in the customers, but now taking it up a level. If you're going to have a successful business, you want to create a big change in the world. And it's so for example, if I'm going out and I'm saying, right, okay, my goal is to help a million businesses, a million small businesses improve their strategy, right? What is that actually going to create? Effectively, that means that a million small businesses are going to grow faster than ever before. They're going to employ more people. So perhaps if I manage to succeed in my goal, there's got to be an extra 5-10 million people working in small businesses across the world. What is that change really going to mean for the world? And understanding that. So it's not just a change that you make in terms of your business growing larger, because that's thinking about you. You don't want to do it. You want to think about the change in their businesses and then across the whole world. And if you can visualize that, if you can visualize that change and so really make it concrete in your planning, this is the consequence of what my goal means. That then tends to solidify what you want to achieve. So that's the next step. And these first two, they're fairly abstract. They mean that need you to sort of spend time on a Sunday afternoon when you're on a walk, going for a shower or on a long train ride or plane ride or possibly driving, thinking about things through and settling it all down. And the best way that you can do these is if you can capture them down in one sentence, possibly 2 sentences, but definitely short, 6 or 7 words, and ideally something that your mum, or if you're young enough, your grandmother will understand. Yeah, it's got to be clear and simple enough that she understands, she gets it, and then she says, she asks you questions. She just says, that's nice, dear. It's too long, it's too complicated. The next step is to find a simple truth. One way of saying this is to say, oh, find a policy, find other ways of looking that you're going to deliver everything. But a simple truth. What is the one simple thing that you're going to do? Nike said, okay, we want to go out and make people fit. Their simple truth. We're going to make trainers so that they can go out and be active. Yeah. McDonald's said, we're going to go out. We want to give people quick, fast food and good meals. And their simple truth is we make burgers that you can get in under 5 minutes. Everything else fundamentally comes down to delivering on that. So for example, in a lot of small businesses, you might find, oh, I'm doing a bit of this, I'm doing a bit of this, I'm doing a bit of that. And there isn't a simple truth that combines everything. So your simple truth is a single way that says this is what we do. We only do this. We don't do anything else. And again, we keep this to 6 or 7 words, a short sentence, to make it really easy to do. Because every time after you develop your simple truth, and you can go back, or you can revise it a few times, but every time after you've developed it, you use that as a touchboard for everything else that you do. Yeah, I think we're thinking of doing this. Does it deliver the simple truth? No, then we don't do it. And this keeps you focused on your core objective. And the simple truth, obviously, delivers the change and it helps you hit the goal. The next, I was going to say the next step, but we've obviously got steps here. The next thing that you need to do is you need to get the steps to your goal. But years ago, I was reading Thomas Aquinas, a sort of Roman Catholic saint, and he talked about building a stairway to heaven, the logical steps that you need to take through reason to become a believer. And he got to the end point, and there's this huge gap, and he realized you cannot logically prove the existence of God. And it's exactly the same for most of us when we try and demonstrate how our business is going to get to be $1 billion. If we start with where we are now, and we go up the steps so far, and then there's a gap of imagination, a gap of confidence, a loss of faith, and then there is this chasm that we can't get across. And so you're then ending up with a strategy that will take you so far, but won't deliver the results that you need. So what we actually do is really simple. We work backwards. We start with a goal where we want to be, and then say, okay, what is the last step that I need to take to reach my goal? And how do I reach that one and that one and that one? And we work back all the way from where we want to be in 5 or 10 years time and build ourselves a ladder through the steps going up to where we want to be. And this works because you're working from a distant state, and every time you're coming back closer to reality, you're getting more and more concrete understanding. Now, this can get kind of complicated because there are lots of branching paths, but overall, you get more clarity and it's easier to find a plausible path from where you are now to where you want to be by working backwards. And these steps are the actions that you then need to take. And if you go out and you do something else and it's not going to be delivering one of these steps, it's like, okay, why are you going off at a tangent? That's not going to help you. It's very much thinking about, okay, I want to go to the North Pole and then taking a flight off to Argentina. Yes, you're going somewhere, but you're not going in the direction towards your goal. So by having the steps, you've then got a clear path to go forward. Once you've got those steps, and it's not easy to produce those, then you've got to come up with a bunch of gates. And the gates always for me are metric driven. These are numbers, right? What does it actually mean to hit one of those steps? Going far into the far distance, they're going to be vague, they're going to be revised a number of times. But your first 5 to 6 steps, the action points that you need to deliver to hit those steps, you can define what the numbers are. Now, when I'm working with startups or consultants or solopreneurs, yep, we look at the business model canvas and we're saying, okay, for every part of the business model, what are the numbers that part of the business model has got to deliver for it to be successful? What are the net promoter scores? What are the number of people coming in the funnel? What are the conversion rates? How do you define the quality of the content that you are creating or the product that you are making? How do you control the costs? And very much when you look at the goals that you want to achieve and the steps that you want to achieve, you can then decompose metrics all the way down so that you have the numbers to run your business. And what I found very much working with thousands of entrepreneurs, the ones who don't have numbers, who don't have metrics like this, generally tend to fail. Yeah, totally. They disappear within 1 or 2 or 3 years because the numbers tell the business. And as Peter Drucker says, what gets measured gets managed. If you don't understand your numbers, you can't manage your business effectively. Therefore, you can't hit the goals. But at the same time, if you have numbers and they're the wrong numbers, which a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs do, then you're still going off on tangents. You haven't got this focus to where you want to go. So this is why we define the numbers, starting with the goal, and then work backwards to decompose to have precise numbers, and every single one of them builds towards the top of that pyramid. And then the last part of the strategy framework is building an ecosystem or system rather, or a garden. Right? Is one of the things that I've seen is most people who start a business, whether it's their own business just by themselves or a startup or even a larger business, copy what everybody else is already doing. And that's just a matter of, okay, we want to start a kebab shop. We look at how other people run kebab shops. We run the kebab shop in the same way. We want to start a tech business. Okay, we look at what a successful SaaS business is doing. We run ours in the same way. And a business system, or a business model, as I tend to call it, is an organic system. It's an ecosystem. Everything depends on everything else. And fundamentally, your business system has to do a couple of things. Firstly, it has to make your product and service far more effective than anybody else's products or service, even though the product or service may be exactly the same. And secondly, it's got to help you get rid of the competition, either neutralizing them or making it harder for them to exist. Why are these things too important when you're building a business system? Well, if you go back, if you think about how many car manufacturers there are in the US at the moment, there are maybe 10 or 15. Go back 20, 30 years and it was GM, Chrysler and Ford. Go back to 1900 And it wasn't 3, it wasn't 30, it wasn't 300, it was 1,300 car manufacturers in the US. And a lot of those had better products than the early GM, the early Chrysler, the early Ford. But what those 3 companies had was the ability to go out and create more value than anybody else. Ford's production line, Sloan's management system at GM enabled them to grow faster and do better than anybody else. And so you need something that accelerates the value that you're creating for your customers, the value that you create as a business. And at the same time, 1,300 competitors is relatively small, especially when we look at startups or even sort of professional services, where there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people out there. And if you're doing the same service as they are with the same business model, the same business system, you can't compete effectively. You're going to be price taking rather than price making. And so by spending time to design what kind of garden you want, what kind of system is going to deliver the metrics that you need, which is going to deliver your steps, which is then going to deliver your goal and the change that you want to create, you've got a significantly better chance at delivering this for your businesses, and it's a lot more satisfying. What I've seen is that when you work like this, you get less stressed, you spend more time on the work that matters, and you get better results faster because you are spending far less time going off in the wrong direction and doing things that don't have an impact. Obviously, today I've tried to simplify it down so it really hits the mum test. I think my mum would follow everything that I've said today. I tried to strip out most of the jargon, but underlying this, there are layers upon layers upon layers of different strategy tools that all come together to make it very, very robust. So just to sum up and give you a few minutes to ask questions. The first point, be absolutely clear about your destination. As Heather's pointed out, I have spent quite a lot of time running in jungles, and literally I've gone into the jungle with a long machete. My phone doesn't work in there, so I take some morphine with me just in case I hurt myself and have to crawl out because there's no mobile signal. If you just go out and explore, you do not get anywhere at all fast. You may find some really interesting things and come back sweaty and tired and happy at the end of the day, but you don't reach a useful or a meaningful destination. And when we're doing businesses, that's what you need to do, unless it's a hobby. Secondly, be really, really clear about the change that your business is going to create in your customers, in your market. And the clearer that you understand that change, the more ability you have to be creating the steps, taking the actions to deliver that change. If you don't know what change you're going to create, you are then at the mercy of what everybody else is doing in the market. Thirdly, have a source of truth. We do this. This is how we are going to create that change. There are always lots of different ways of creating that change. But inevitably, what the big challenge for most people is not choosing the right path. It is saying, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Last week, I was running an accelerator in Israel for a big venture capital firm, and I was having so much fun. I was thinking, wow, I've got to do this. And I came back and I thought, right, I'm going to start pitching and seeing if I can run more accelerators. And then thinking, well, no, actually, that's not what I want to do. It's fun, but it doesn't meet my truth, so I'm not going to do it. And that keeps you honest. It keeps you on the path. Then your steps. Work back from where you want to be, which is out here, and then think, okay, what are all the steps that I have to take on the path? So a path like this, it's fairly easy. Often the path is less clear. You're going through, it's got to be pretty uncertain. And so you might say, okay, this is one potential path going off that way, another potential path going off that way, but they've all got to come back to that key point there. If they don't come back there, then you're not on the right path. So building the steps backwards from where you want to be to where you are. Creating yourself gates. What are the numbers that are going to show that you're on the right path? Choosing the gates that you need to get through. And honestly, as an entrepreneur, it's so easy to keep working and working and working because you can always do more. But having gates that give you numbers, that give you clear targets, and when you get through one of those gates, it's just like when you finish an Ironman, when you finish a marathon, you say, yes, and have a time out, time to relax, time to chill, because you've done something that's worth rewarding yourself for. And then finally, it's all about building the system, building the business model, building the tactical components of the business that are going to drive you there or take you along that path towards the final destination. So I'm bang on 20 minutes and 16 seconds. So final slide for everybody who's a GoGoDone member. I offer discounted mentoring, which is 50% off the first month for GoGoDoners. You can obviously email me with the code, and which point you're going to say, but Dennis, what's your email? Ta-da! Here's the email, and you can head over to denisoakley.com for the to find out a little bit more about me. Heather's got my contact details on for LinkedIn and the website as well, which she'll share. So I hope that's been useful. Ask me any questions. It's been a whistle-stop tour, but follow this process and it makes life so much easier, I tell you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dennis. We do have a few questions, most of them from me. But I'm interested in any tips you can give us on how you know you're starting with the right goal, because there's that investment, right? I put all this time and energy in, and you think like, I should have, instead of going this direction, I should have gone that direction. So any tips for us on making sure we pick that right first direction?
I'm going to say sometimes it doesn't really matter. More complicated than that, but there are always multiple routes to a destination. Literally, I've gone out into some very wild places. When I lived in the UAE, I'd go out and run across the desert, and I just pick a point and try and get there. And by trying to get there, it's often great, but you work back from where you want to be, and you can decompose. Okay, do I go up the east face of Everest? Do I go up to South Col, and then do I go up the northeast face? Figure out that, and then work backwards on how do you get to the start of those points. That's the first thing. There is a huge amount of uncertainty, especially if you're a tech startup and you're trying to do something that nobody else has done before. The problem with the traditional approach of find the problem, find an audience, create a product to solve it, is you've got no greater confidence about the direction that you're going. It's like sailing out into the sea and you've like no idea whether it's a lake, whether it's an ocean or anything else, and you're going to be buffeted by storms. So by starting with a destination, it makes it a lot easier. There's a really good story about a Gurkha, British, one of the Nepalese soldiers were in the British Army in the Second World War, got cut off somewhere in Burma after the Japanese attacked, and he managed to make it back to his line, and the sort of the major who sort of debriefed him and said, well, how did you get back? You didn't have a map or anything. And he said, oh yes sir, I did. And he shows a map, and the major looks at it with astonishment because it's a map of the London Underground. Not of Burma, and that story is being told about the Austrians fighting Napoleon and many more. But having a map, it doesn't matter if the original goal is wrong. The thought process of planning, working through the logical structure, gives you a much deeper understanding of the market, the dynamics, the business logic that's got to happen. So even when you go on to plan B or plan C, you've got a much higher chance of success.
I love it. I love it. And so when it comes to the change you want to make with your customer, for your customer, Are there any points at which you or your thoughts on engaging with that customer to have a conversation about it rather than sitting back and analyzing, which has its own benefits? But at what point do you look at being in conversation with those customers for customer research and for understanding where they want to go also?
That's a really good point. I generally tend to treat customer discovery as something to do in parallel. Most startups assume that they know what customers want. I mean, when I run lean startup machine workshops, we get 200-300 entrepreneurs come in for the weekend. They form teams based on somebody pitching, and then we say, right, okay, now you thought you were going to be here for a weekend where we were going to teach you. Okay, no, you're going to go out of the building, you're going to find some customers, you're going to ask them what the problems are, and then you're going to come back and tell us. And 90% come back and say, oh my God, they didn't have the problems that we thought, we need to do something different. The 10% who come back didn't talk to anybody and say, they said there's no problem here, we're going to keep on doing what we want, and they fail rapidly. So getting out, doing that customer discovery, and that's absolutely critical for any startup. To a large extent, I assume that here you've gone out, you understand a little bit about the problem and how important the pain is to people. Have they got the money to solve that pain? And that you've got at least a map of the territory, because otherwise this is all just smoke and mirrors. It's you're wasting your time and your money, frankly. But once you've got something like that, you've got some evidence, you've got some validated hypotheses, then we can start playing a little bit.
Nice. And we have a question from Renee on LinkedIn, and he asks, can you comment on the value of an individual's personal development as you build your business?
The value of an individual's personal development as you build the business. I can only talk about my own experience here. I found that the more I sit back and write about what I'm doing, and the more I run or take part in accountability groups, just like GoGoDone. I mean, Heather and I were talking about this beforehand. The more meta awareness you have of what the hell you're doing. When I started out 20 years ago, I just did what I thought was common sense. Some of it worked. Some of it worked spectacularly well. Other parts of it led me into huge disasters. So what I found and what I've seen is that as you reflect, and strategy is an amazing way of reflecting on reality as it is and how we want to change reality rather than just getting along with the flow, then you get more control over reality. And as you get more control over reality, you become wiser. Don't think you have become Solomon, but I feel I'm inching closer, and I hope you are too, Renee.
Wonderful. Well, Dennis, I can't thank you enough to those folks out there listening and watching. Love to have you follow Denis on LinkedIn, and of course, I'll pop his website into our chats as well to make sure you have easy access to that. And for anyone who enjoyed this, I would love to have you follow me on LinkedIn and connect with me for our next LinkedIn Live, which should happen, I believe, in 2 weeks. So, Denis, I can't thank you enough. It's really been fascinating. You have my brain's on fire. I'm going to be spending some time kind of stepping back on my path and rewalking it a little bit, kind of along the guidelines that you have. So, can't thank you enough. And Renee says he's wiser. And thank you for your insights. You are inspiring.
Thank you very much, Heather. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.